Is it possible to run a truly sustainable business? From environment to supply chain, purpose to profit, there are many challenges facing business owners. But this is the question that we're going to discuss here today with John Maddy. John is co-founder of Long Valley Holidays, a company that over the past 15 years have helped thousands of people from all over the world enjoy nights under the canvas in the UK's Lake District. John is passionate about the outdoors and outdoor living, changing the way people camp whilst keeping his business as sustainable as possible. Indeed, during the pandemic, he chose to undertake an MBA, writing his thesis on the environmental impact of around 10,000 tourists travelling to Long Valley campsites over a 3-year period. So, John, thank you very much for joining us today. It's nice to have you here. And might I say also, I think this is our hairiest episode to date.
Hi, Dan. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. So I'm going to start off with the first question that we've been asking all of our guests on this podcast, which is a bit of a challenge because I don't think anybody's actually succeeded this yet, but is tell us about yourself in 60 seconds.
Okay. Well, father of 2 kids. I'm 40 years old this year. Live in the Lake District. Cheers. Thank you. I've got a passion for music, the outdoors, natural environments, and originally, maybe like a lot of people these days, they're not necessarily trained in or in the job that they were originally trained to do. So I originally qualified in the outdoor education sector and kind of moved into people development before I'd set up the glamping business in 2008 with my business partner, and I suppose it wasn't called glamping back then, and we'd spotted a gap in the market, and you would some would say we became kind of early pioneers of glamorous camping, as it was called. And I suppose, and while setting up a new business was exciting and kind of all consuming, it was important to me that I could balance that with family life as well. Nothing, is more important than that to me. I'm also passionate about innovation and sustainability, and Long Valley gave me that opportunity to bring both of them passions together to create, a positive impact on what we're doing.
Well, it's I was interested to learn about glamping and the fact that it came into the it wasn't a term back then, as you mentioned, which we'll come back to later. But I suppose a question that I'd like to kind of ask you first is, obviously you've been in business now doing that for 15 years. During that time, we've seen such things as a global recession and a pandemic, but I'm keen to learn, like, what other challenges maybe have you had to lead through, and kind of how did you show yourself to be the best version of a leader that you and your team needed at the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's excuse me, it's been a fairly, as you've rightly documented, setting up a business seems pretty crazy, and if I'd have known what was coming, I probably would have stayed in a fairly stable job right back then. I think I liken it to a kind of a double-edged sword of an emerging market. Essentially, there wasn't an industry, there wasn't that market when we started, and we had to create it. We had to educate our customers about how to holiday and how to interact in this way with the type of accommodation we had, and back then it was very traditionally focused with regards to accommodation and holidaying in the UK, as well as the Lake District. was no regulations really in our industry. There was a huge amount of grey areas that we didn't like operating in, and we wanted to try and standardise that as much as we could. We had a background, as I say, in outdoor ed and health and safety management also, and we brought them transferable skills into what we were offering, and tried to forge a path in the industry and create the industry along with our previous skills and knowledge into a stable platform to build our business from. So in the early days, we spent a lot of time building super strong foundations of the business with regards to regulation, with regards to working with providers to instill a better work ethic, better choice of products, safer products as well, and looking at the development and I suppose honing of the supply chain within that. So innovation was really important to us through this, and being a leader during this development by default, I suppose, for the wider industry, to enable businesses to talk to us, share experiences, create dialogue with manufacturers where we were very, very small fry, where their accounts were huge. They didn't really want to talk to us and have an open dialogue in the early years, but with a bit of determination and a loud knock on the door, they soon knew that the industry was growing in popularity, and they wanted to make sure that they were tackling it in the right way. In the early days, the buzzwords were regulation,
right,
and quality of manufacturing and equipment, whereas today, it's more focused on environmental sustainability and circular economy, etc.
Well, as I mentioned before, we, as part of our kind of research for this episode, we discovered that glamping was actually only added to the Oxford Dictionary in 2016. And you started Long Valley Holidays, Long Valley Yurts as it was then, in 2008, as you mentioned. So arguably one of the pioneers of as it's now known, glamping. Do you think there's been a kind of pivotal moment to get you to where you are now? Like, is it about planning, luck, or kind of accepting mistakes? What do you think?
It's probably a bit of all of that, Dan, if I'm honest. I think there's a lot of buzzwords in industry that we throw about on a daily basis, really. But some of them are more true than others. I think failing fast and learning from your mistakes is definitely important for us. Being a super small business at that point, we couldn't spend a huge amount of time dwelling on things. I suppose, one thing for me is about quality. We wanted to make sure that what we were offering was the best quality it could be. So not cutting corners. We needed to make sure that we were investing correctly in the right materials, the right equipment. And when that wasn't there, we either were innovating and creating that, or we were buying the best quality products that were on the market, or we could afford, I suppose. I suppose staying agile, in quite an uncertain environment. I mentioned before about this emerging market. It was massively, rapidly changing, and there wasn't a way that we could say, well, this is what it's going to be now. We're just going to do this. We knew that this was a wave of interest, and the industry was exploding in popularity, and we wanted to make sure that we were at the front of that and offered the best quality experience that we could and was on the market at the time. And in order for us to do that, we needed to stay agile. And for a small business, that's really difficult because there's investments to make, and where you're funding your growth through your revenue. We didn't have deep pockets. We were essentially two lads with a bit of a dream and a wing and a prayer early on, and so we my business partner Richard and myself, he had a small family, small kids, likewise, and so we didn't want to take huge amounts of risks. So that was definitely in the back of our minds early on. We knew that. I mean, we never owned any of our locations early on. So up until recently, we knew that we needed, in order for us to grow and get in the right key areas, we knew that we needed to offer a completely different business model, something that wasn't about in this country, but was very similar to what had been going on in Europe for years and years. That was a joint venture partnership model, and we honed that over a few years in the early days, and looked at what was important. And very early on, we knew that in order for us to navigate this kind of uncertain environment and make sure that we were doing the best job we possibly could, we needed to put people at the center of what we did, whether that was our customers, and whether it was our supply chain, or it was the partners that we worked with. So I think, in terms of the early days, that was definitely at the heart of our decision making, and making a bomb-proof product as well. We all of our sites were remote. We didn't have the luxury of being able to a phone call with an issue and us drive 5 minutes or walk to the end of the garden, and sort out a bigger issue there. So that was that we knew that we needed to make sure that we were offering a product that was fail safe.
And you kind of briefly touched on this a little bit already, but I want to ask you about purpose. How important do you think purpose is, and how do you kind of ensure that your organization and its activities are aligned with the kind of core values?
Yeah. So I think our purpose has always been, I know our purpose has always been the same, essentially. It may be a different word, but it has always been environmentally focused. And it's funny, actually. I was asked a similar question a few years ago now, when I was doing a presentation to some executive MBA students, and it left me with a bit of a gap in my plan back then, if I'm honest. And the question kind of extended to, so what if you were hit by a bus next week? How would your work be continued? Because I understand that in order for our business to be delivering the ethos and the dialogue and the purpose of our values, I'm the one that's driving that. So if I was to get hit by a bus, what would I need? What would I need to make sure that's in place for the business to autonomously kind of continue? And I wanted to ensure that my purpose became autonomous. So I began to create a plan for this transition. You would say to kind of align with my personal purpose with the business purpose, and how do I go about doing this? Well, I began over the last several years to implement a framework, and that had started early on, but following that question, it kind of prioritized that. above house really for me. And it was certainly environmentally aligned. And independent. I wanted it to be independently audited as well, so that removed any steer. With growth potentially, we're working with a lot of independent partners. There's a lot of different stakeholders. For example, on some of our locations, our accommodation is a small part of what they offer. So if they change their vision and values as their organisation, will that have a direct impact on what we do? So I needed to safeguard that.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason in future we decide to sell the organisation or I get hit by a bus,
let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. How does that have an effect on what we offer? And I needed to make sure that the brand was aligned with that. And it instilled a dialogue with the customers, the further stakeholders and wider partners to ensure that was threaded throughout, I suppose. And yeah, it was a huge undertaking, but it has been pivotal. And I would say this alignment now is certainly in place throughout the company. And I've seen a massive change in engagement between all of our stakeholders. Our business is better for it. It has a lot clear narrative throughout now as well.
Well, I was going to ask you about kind of the partnerships and providers and that and the relationship that you have with them, and I suppose because obviously you work closely with these people. Do you think that either that in terms of working sustainably, either your vision has had any impact on theirs, or has anything changed? Has anything changed as a result of your work with them? Or how do you make these work sustainably for both you and your business?
Yeah, I never underestimate the power of strategic collaboration. I think that's enabled us to grow and certainly secure ourselves as a true, authentic brand. I think it's very important to us. Your question, as we grow, we don't want to be seen as a faceless company. It's something really, really important to me that our industry is very different to others. There are many kind of who go into it with their hearts rather than their heads, and come without any previous experience. It's very much a lifestyle business for the vast majority of people that enter into this industry. And I suppose we have by default been through many years of learning and learning from our mistakes as well. And it seems that we've kind of come to have a unique level of experience with that. But we're very happy to share that with others. From very early on, we've seen, as I mentioned before, about the lack of regulation in the industry. I wanted to ensure that the same mistakes were not happening, and I come from, as mentioned before, also workplace cultures where sharing best practice is commonplace. Learning from your mistakes is commonplace. Not to sweep under the carpet and hide from them, and hopefully somebody won't question you or somebody won't find out. That's not the culture that I wanted to instill in my business and in the industry. So from very early on, we were collectively setting up meetings and open forums for discussion around health and safety principles and lack of regulation in our industry, to raise the bar of quality, service, health and safety, so that, as I say, this emerging market was learning more from the people that were in it, although they were still finding their way. but to ensure that the same mistakes weren't made on a daily basis. I suppose what that's done more recently is that has led to me now offering consultancy services within the industry to other glamping businesses and to larger organisations like insurance companies, where people want to know more about the industry and they want to make sure that they're doing right by the products they design, by the level of insurance they're offering, and to ensure that it is compliant as well. Sorry.
No, sorry, carry on.
Just furthermore, what we've then grown to do now is to look at and design syllabus and some qualifications specifically for the camping and glamping industry that will be internationally recognised qualifications as well.
Well, I think just to pick on something there, that I think it's really important that business that approach is so useful, to have a kind of an open door policy of being able to share things that you've learned in order so that the industry, especially when it comes to kind of an environmental and a sustainability point of view. I mean, let's face it, in 2023, the climate crisis isn't going anywhere, and it's not something that can be ignored by kind of any business leader. In fact, I've got some data here. We got the data that over 500 global CEOs and senior executives that were recently surveyed, 34% said that environmental responsibility was one of their biggest challenges. I'm guessing that's something that you agree with, or do you think there's a bigger challenge facing leaders?
Yeah, we're no different. If I'm honest, we certainly want to change for good. I think, and I've kind of wrote about this a bit with a lot of the work that I've done throughout my MBA thesis, and the wider essays that I wrote during my time on the course. And from a point of view of an SME, currently, I think that I write about what I kind of call an eco growth dilemma, which I think a lot of SMEs are facing currently. They're wanting to do good. There's no getting away from that. Everybody wants to make positive steps forward. They're wanting to invest in positive change and understanding that they need to do something different. But in order for them to do that, they haven't got an infinite pot of money. So something needs to change. They either need to grow, they need to grow the revenue, grow the business, further investment, but something needs to happen in order for them to do that. So there's a couple of options. So they either stay the same, same supply chain, smaller economies of scale. That then has an effect on, there's no weight with suppliers there. There's nothing there. So they reach a point on how much they could potentially change, and the type of offering, for example, for us, the type of offering that we have has a certain price point. We can't necessarily, we can add different revenue streams to that, but in terms of what we offer, there's a price point to it. And that's certainly changing in this economy as a result of COVID. That's changed again. So how we operate as a business fundamentally comes down to how much we can charge for our products, and that has a direct result on what we can, how quick we can turn the ship. So you can then look at you grow to increase that. You can get economies of scale. You can make it financially viable. To invest in more environmentally friendly products, services, equipment, design, more sustainable products. You've got then the opportunity to invest in, as we have as an organisation, invest in research and reporting. You can then look at net zero, carbon reduction strategies. And, there is help out there for small businesses. And we've been very fortunate to be able to tap into that. But it's slow. It's a slow process. You can get your products commissioned, when you've got a little bit more size and scope. You can carry more influential weight in steering the sector like we have. We haven't been a huge company, but we've, as I said, we've banged the door a bit louder than others. And it allows us to create more of an efficient infrastructure in workshop, tooling, etc.
Well, I think, it's the good news is that there has been a marked shift around this topic, I think, in the business world. And I think more people are wanting to take action. I think, as you say, a lot of it all revolves around money. But, the more, it's only ever seen as a good thing, isn't it? I think that when people are when organizations are attack or doing their bit, shall we say, I've got some more data here. So over 90% of our respondents that took part in our survey recently that indicated that their organizations are taking tangible steps towards tackling environmental issues, whether that be through ESG, becoming net zero, or obtaining sustainability accreditations. Transforming our organizations into sources of positive impact won't be easy. So my question to you, I guess, that as a leader, and you kind of already listed a couple of these, what are you prioritizing for the future?
Yeah, I think, we are prioritizing our planet. And this, we have to align all our business practices around this to safeguard our future. And it may be slower for some, it may be quicker for others, but certainly for us, it's crucial to how we operate as a business, what our customers want, more so now than ever. We're painstakingly analysing all of our working practices to ensure we're doing the best we can. And we've got a plan in place to make it even better in the future, because it is a staged plan for a small business. We have a certain amount of money to throw at a certain project or a certain growth strategy. And when we get to the next step or the next rung of the ladder, we'll implement something further down the line. But we're doing everything we possibly can to ensure that we are as environmentally sustainable as possible. And as I mentioned before, that with that eco-growth dilemma, we've got to keep the cogs turning. So there are going to be practices that are not 100% environmentally aligned, and businesses shouldn't feel bad about that. But they should have a plan in place to be working to reduce that or eradicate that within their time frame. We are creating a carbon negative company, not just because I want a badge, because it's the right thing to do. I think many companies or all companies should be working on that. I think there should be more regulation around new companies starting to be on a framework and align strategies around their business practices and principles in very early stages. I'm trying, and it's working very, very well. The feedback's been fantastic. Is to change the narrative around how we're doing that and bringing our customers on the journey with us. We believe that it's having a greater impact. It's creating a stronger identity for us and bigger brand authenticity as well. On the surface, if you look at my industry, it seems green, right? Yeah. So camping, beautiful fields, lovely landscape. It really isn't. I'm not saying mine isn't, but I'm saying on the whole, it isn't. people are definitely, looking to reduce their impact, but it is much slower. And the impact of the UK's kind of net zero strategy and the rollout of that is pushing businesses to focus on just the four walls, which is within their kind of scope of their plan, their kind of just physical. That's the only thing they're able to concentrate on. But they've left a huge part out, certainly in our industry. And I recently wrote, as you mentioned on my MBA, I recently wrote a thesis around carbon reduction and carbon impact of customer transport to and from our venues, and analysed the carbon impact of that. And it was shocking, Dan, and we're a very, very small business. But what it did was it exposed how the UK's net zero strategy or reduction strategy, but on top of that, the Cumbria's net zero strategy is unfortunately flawed, and how we need to make sure that we are getting more research done in the area, and more accurate research that's not based on national statistics, dragged down to a local level, but is dedicated to helping businesses genuinely reduce their impact and how they can change their narrative with their customers as well.
Well, a phrase that we're hearing a lot more of at the moment is regenerative leadership, and we're starting to explore that a lot more, certainly in this country. And I suppose my question is, what's the kind of best thing you're doing as a leader right now? Would you say?
Quite busy. So I suppose, as from what we've been talking about, becoming more of a purpose-led business is priority, and openly talking about that. When before we were just cracking on and not really using that in a way. I wasn't really one to shout about it in marketing, but we see that there's not just a benefit to the company, but people are looking to become aligned with more purpose-led businesses that are environmentally, sustainably focused, and they feel very passionate about that. So it's important for us to communicate our journey and our purpose within that. Turning aspirations into action. I know that sounds a bit, but it is. It's very important for us to focus on that. And I suppose we're trying to enable a wider positive environmental impact through our business, to our guests, our supply chain, stakeholders, partners. All manner of parts of the business, and I think I've said it before, ensuring that we're not just paying lip service, to doing good. We're physically, doing everything we possibly can, and whether that is a framework to ensure that business is, or the work is being done and conducted in the right way, right the way through to, giving our workers and staff and followers and supporters the joy of us winning an award. Is proving great, but it's showing. I'm glad our staff, are starting to really benefit in that way, because it really shows, all of the hard work they're putting into to making this change a reality. Right the way.
It's all very exciting stuff, and I thank you for sort of sharing that with us today. I'm gonna close with asking our final question, which is the same that we're asking for everyone, all of our guests that join us, which is if you were starting fresh, what would be the best piece of advice you would give yourself?
So trust in your gut, and always choose the right thing, not the cheaper thing, the quicker thing, or the easier thing. Those might not necessarily be the right thing, but for me that's important. But to ensure your values remain at the heart of the choices that you make.
That's really a sound, I think, advice, and really responsible advice. So I think that's really good. And of course, keep growing an excellent beard, I think, is another one. Well, John, I'm going to wrap us up there. That's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. And if you want to find out more about Impact or Long Valley Holidays, or follow either myself or John on LinkedIn, then you'll find all the links that you need in the description. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.